The day I entered the imperial palace, I believed I had found the greatest honor a Roman could ever receive. Everything looked perfect. Marble, gold, music. Rome seemed eternal. But beauty can hide terrible secrets. I served senators, generals, and nobles. They laughed loudly, but their eyes searched every corner of the room.
That morning, a senator disappeared.
Beyond these walls, nearly 1 million people called Rome home. None of them knew how quickly fear would spread through the empire. When I first saw our emperor, he looked calm, confident, almost kind. None of us imagined how quickly admiration would become fear. The palace applauded every word he spoke, but behind every smile, no accusation, no trial, no farewell. Outside the palace, Rome still looked alive, but people no longer spoke freely. Every conversation ended the moment a soldier appeared.
That night, I could not sleep.
The first change was almost invisible. New guards, empty offices, familiar faces simply vanished. Soon, even memories were rewritten. If a man displeased the emperor, it was as though he had never existed. The feasts continued. The music never stopped. Yet every guest wondered the same thing. Who would be missing tomorrow? Even Rome's greatest generals no longer trusted their victories. Success itself had become dangerous. Fear escaped the palace walls. Soon, the entire city began to breathe differently. The palace kitchens had once been full of laughter. Now, even whispers felt too loud. There were corridors beneath the palace where servants were forbidden to walk. The guards entered often, but not everyone came back. Rome had conquered kingdoms across the world. Yet its own people had begun to fear the coming of night. I told myself tomorrow would be different. I still believed reason would return to Rome. I was wrong. His official name was Gaius Caesar. The soldiers had once called him Caligula. Now, even that childhood name was spoken only in whispers. An accusation no longer needed proof. Under Caligula, suspicion could become judgment before a man was allowed to defend himself. An accusation no longer needed proof. Under Caligula, suspicion could become judgment before a man was allowed to defend himself. They often came after sunset. A knock at the door, the sound of armor, and a family's life could be broken before morning. Ancient writers would later describe his moods as sudden and terrifying. Inside the palace, we applauded because the guards were watching. In those days, silence could condemn you, but the wrong expression could do the same. Fear entered our homes. Parents taught children not to repeat what they heard, because an innocent sentence could travel farther than anyone intended. Some prisoners were accused of conspiracy. Others had offended someone powerful. We servants were never told which difference mattered. Rome still had a senate. Its members still gathered and spoke. But power had changed the meaning of every word they dared to use. A man could lose more than his life. His home, wealth, and memory could be taken, leaving his family to carry the punishment. Rome had once feared armies beyond its borders. Now, its people feared footsteps outside their own door. The palace had become quieter. Doors that once welcomed visitors were now guarded day and night. The palace had become quieter. Doors that once welcomed visitors were now guarded day and night. Every banquet looked magnificent. Yet among the servants, excitement had been replaced by caution. Rumors spread faster than smoke. No one knew which stories were true, but everyone feared repeating them aloud. Power could be felt before the emperor even entered the room. In the palace, curiosity could be dangerous. Servants survived by seeing less and asking nothing. Even then, people disagreed about what was happening. Some believed every rumor, Others believed almost none. The gardens remained beautiful. Only the conversations had changed. Ancient authors would later describe these banquets in dramatic detail. I remembered something simpler. Rumors can become as powerful as armies. Soon, no one could tell where one ended and the other began. I still hoped Rome would find its way back to peace. I did not yet know the darkest days were still ahead. Every empire depends on records. Every ruler depends on the story those records choose to tell. Some whispered unbelievable stories. Others swore they were impossible. None of us knew what to believe anymore. Rome still traded, celebrated, and prayed. But beneath the noise, fear had become part of everyday life. Ancient writers described these banquets very differently. I remember something simpler. Everyone watched the emperor before speaking. Even the Praetorian Guard seemed different. Their loyalty was unquestioned, but their faces revealed nothing. When answers disappeared from the palace, many Romans searched for them in the temples. The palace fed us well, but no meal could satisfy the hunger to know what tomorrow would bring. Life continued because it had to. Rome was more than its emperor. It was millions of ordinary people trying to live another day. In uncertain times, stories become powerful. Sometimes they preserve the truth. Sometimes they bury it. History would remember Caligula in many different ways. I only remembered what it felt like to live through those uncertain days. The palace had never felt so heavily guarded. It was as though everyone expected something, but no one dared say what. Every conversation ended the same way. Silence arrived before the guards did. The Senate still met. Officials still worked. Rome appeared orderly. But beneath the surface, even men who had commanded Rome's greatest armies seemed unusually cautious inside these walls. Sometimes a meeting lasted only moments. Yet afterward, everyone walked away looking over their shoulders.
The oldest servants taught us one lesson above all others. Survive by listening more than speaking.
Looking across the city, it was difficult to believe how different life felt inside the imperial residence. Looking across the city, it was difficult to believe how different life felt inside the imperial residence. There were conversations that servants were never meant to hear. I learned long ago that surviving sometimes meant walking away. The guards remained disciplined as always, yet something in their faces suggested that difficult days lay ahead. I still believed tomorrow would resemble yesterday. History had already decided otherwise. The palace looked unchanged, but the silence felt heavier than ever. Those who had served many emperors recognized the feeling. They simply refused to name it. Discipline remained perfect. Yet beneath that discipline, something was beginning to shift. No one knew what the day would bring. Everyone behaved as though nothing had changed. I had walked these corridors for years. I had never seen so many important men avoid looking at one another. Then, the silence finally broke. No servant understood what had happened. We only knew that the palace had descended into chaos. Rumors spread within minutes. Facts arrived much more slowly. By evening, everyone knew that Rome had changed forever. Few understood what would happen next. Emperors rise, emperors fall. But it is ordinary people who must wake the next morning. The palace did not erupt into panic. It became something even stranger, unnaturally quiet. The palace did not erupt into panic. It became something even stranger, unnaturally quiet. Orders replaced rumors. For the first time in days, people moved with purpose instead of uncertainty.
News traveled quickly through Rome. Certainty did not. Rome needed more than answers. It needed stability. Power changes hands only when someone is willing to protect the next ruler. Before the city learned his name, the palace was already preparing for a new beginning.
Empires pause for no one. Even after history changes, bread is baked, markets open, and families wait for tomorrow.
History is written one line at a time. Long before scholars debate it, someone must first record it.
I had entered the palace believing emperors shaped history alone. I left knowing that history is carried by everyone who survives it.
One emperor's story had ended. Rome's story was only beginning. When the shouting ended, another task began. History had to decide what would be remembered. Even those who lived through the same years remembered them differently. Rome had survived another emperor. The city always moved forward. Stone could preserve a face for centuries, but it could never preserve the whole truth. The people I trusted cared less about rumors than about whether their children would grow up in peace. Empires are remembered through rulers. Civilizations survive because ordinary people keep working.
Power seemed permanent while I lived inside those walls. From here, it suddenly looked very small.
Years became decades. Witnesses disappeared. Written accounts remained. Time erodes marble more slowly than memory. Yet both are shaped by those who come after. I was never a senator, never a general, never an emperor. I was only a witness.
Nearly 2,000 years have passed. Rome has changed beyond recognition. Yet the stones remain. The voices are gone. The arguments are gone. Only silence remembers where an empire once spoke. Sometimes I imagine those halls exactly as they were, filled with servants, soldiers, senators, and uncertainty. History is not uncovered all at once. It is rebuilt, one fragment at a time. Every artifact answers one question and often creates another. Ancient writers told one version of the story. Modern historians continue to compare, question, and challenge those accounts. I witnessed fear, but I also witnessed resilience. Rome survived because its people never stopped rebuilding.
No emperor outlived Rome. The city endured long after every throne stood empty.
I arrived believing history belonged to emperors. I left knowing it belongs to everyone who lives through it. My name was Marcus. I was only a servant, but for a brief moment, I witnessed